Okay, great. Well, thanks very much. Appreciate that you responded positively to the invitation. I know that you must have a lot of individuals and groups looking for your feedback, so thanks very much. I
No problem.
appreciate it. Um, just want to maybe start off briefly here with a question about your state of mind and our collective state of mind. How are you doing, and how do you think the city's responded so far?
Well, I think these are unsettling and uncertain times for a lot of people. And so from my vantage point, there's no playbook that we can follow. There's nothing that you can pull off the shelf and just refer to and say, here's how you get from point A to point B. So these are challenging times for everybody, for the city as a corporation. We have to manage through a lot of the issues that are facing communities and businesses everywhere. So it's not something that is unique just to us. So in that context, I think we're holding up well. I've had an opportunity to talk to a lot of folks in this kind of platform, but also just on the phone. There is a heightened sense of anxiety in the community because of the unknown. There's a fear of obviously COVID-19. There's a fear of loved ones getting sick. There's a fear of the infection rate amongst healthcare workers and long-term care homes. And so this anxiety, this unknown feeling of where we're going really has to be managed. And I do think here in Niagara that the media, the healthcare professionals, the different municipalities, they're all doing their part to make sure that the message is getting out to individuals that we're all in this together, that we all have a role to play, and that if we just continue to follow the directions of public health, that we will get to a new place of normalcy. I don't think going back to the way things were 2 months ago is going to be a reality anytime soon. But I think getting to a new place of normal where people feel more comfortable, that's the aim and goal and hope.
All right. I think my internet's a little bit unstable, but we're going to try to move forward anyways. I just had a question about the city of St. Catharines itself. Is there anything unique about the way that pandemic has presented itself in our midst, perhaps in comparison to other centers?
Yeah, and I think we're an urban center, so we have the largest, most densely population here in Niagara. We also have the main hospital, the largest hospital, which is the identified space for any kind of COVID outbreak. So we do have a different, I'll say, understanding of the magnitude per se when we have so many of our healthcare professionals who live in our community but also work at the hospital. We have a very robust bus system. So our transit drivers are being exposed to challenges. And we do have the largest, what would be infrastructure for groceries and food services. And so in that context, we're a lot more alike the other larger cities in, say, Ontario, London, Kitchener, Waterloo, Kingston, Windsor, places like that, where we're all going through this in a similar way. But from our vantage point here in St. Catharines, I think communications got out early. We were the first municipality to shut our facilities and our municipality effectively down here in the region. And those actions, I think, really went far in protecting our residents.
Yeah, you mentioned healthcare. My wife, for example, is a healthcare professional working in a long-term healthcare setting in Grimsby. We know that we have one of the highest median ages in this area, and at this time we're concerned about the vulnerable and the elderly in our city, living in care homes and in other places as well. What kind of conversations are you having with experts, and what kinds of things is the city doing to help this vulnerable population?
Well, from our perspective, because we're a lower tier municipality, we don't have those direct lines into the long-term care homes like we would at the region. So the region operates 9 long-term care facilities, but also provides support through public health to the other long-term care facilities. And so the the concern for us was the outbreaks. And I think one of the areas that I look at as being a positive is when you look at Ina Grafton, which was the first incident in St. Catharines where an individual was identified with COVID-19. There was no outbreak. That person was transmitted to hospital. They had their controls in place very quickly, and it speaks to the level of preparedness that some of the long-term care facilities in our community have, and we're grateful for that. We understand that others have gone through some more significant challenges, and I think while we can't prevent what's happening now, we have to look forward and make a note of how do we protect our most vulnerable moving forward. And that's where a lot of the directives from public health are going to come from. That when people say, Marv, why do I have to follow these regulations? Why do I have to follow these restrictions? It's because we need to protect the elderly and the most vulnerable. So even as we move into a new norm, there's going to be things that we are not used to, and the public's going to question them. And then we have to remind them that we can't have an outbreak at a long-term care facility, because as we've seen across the country, it completely decimates the entire infrastructure of a long-term care facility and puts so many people in jeopardy.
For sure. And I think previous to this, you sent me some notes that said that there's actually new initiatives taking place.
Yeah, and so
you mentioned something like Senior Center Without Walls. Can you talk a bit about that?
And that's great. And so what we've done is we have, there's three senior centers here in Niagara. We have about 1,000 members for those centers. And so our recreation team really got innovative, and some of the calls that I've been able to make to some of the older adults in our community, the common theme is isolation. And that's a very concerning place for a lot of people to be because of the mental health challenges around it. And so the recreation team came up with the Senior Centers Without Walls. And so it's a using the telephone system, because seniors are very much used to using a telephone system that places seniors into a virtual room where they can hear from experts in different fields. They can talk amongst themselves, and they can listen and discuss with our recreation team about ways to keep healthy, and both in the mind and in the body while we're staying at home. So it's an initiative that was just launched a week ago. The uptake has been great, and if anybody's looking for information, they can go to the City of St. Catharines website and under Older Adult Center get all the information for it.
Yeah, that was cool when I did a bit of research on it, and realizing that you don't need, a sophisticated understanding of an iPad, or you don't need to press a lot of buttons. All you need is a telephone, and away you go.
Yeah, that's the important part. So we're trying to reach as many people as possible. And it was interesting, Mark, because you bring up communications. When we first came out with our sort of wave of initiatives, there was talk about who are we leaving behind, and one of the segments of our population were the unconnected, and so that's why we did the telephone messaging system. So what happened was I recorded a message and talked about what's happening with COVID-19, and it went right into the landlines of residents across the city. And I know mayors from around Niagara did it, and it was an important message because it got to them where they're comfortable. Pick up the phone, you hear my voice, I identify myself as Mayor Sendzik, and then I leave a message related to COVID-19. So we've done 2 of those, and that really closed the gap between those who get media from social media or from radio or newspaper, and then those who may not be following much, but they understand that when something's on the phone, there's a message there. Quite effective.
Yeah, sure. It definitely makes it a lot more personal at the same time, right? Okay, here's the question that probably you get asked a lot, but probably least like to answer. It's the question about timelines. And I heard you on the news recently, and you were talking about the fact that, St. Catharines, Niagara, flattening the curve. Our acting officer of health was mentioning the same thing. And naturally, that raises the question of the state of emergency and when restrictions might be lifted. Now, I know that you probably don't have a clear answer about that, but I just was wondering for myself, like, what are the criteria by which experts, they look at certain factors and then they say, okay, on the basis of these things, we're going to make the decision to lessen restriction. What are some of those criteria maybe?
I think the most definitive criteria is the prevalence of the virus in the community. And so looking at the infection rate. And if I think we're getting that infection rate below 1, which from a statistical analysis means that when one person is infected, it's infecting less than, that person is infecting less than one person. And when we can get that well below 1, I think New Zealand is at about 0.6, Denmark is about 0.5 or 0.6. And what you're seeing in those countries is the lifting of certain restrictions. And it's because they've been able to, through testing and also through this period of isolation and restriction, have driven the virus to a point where they can now know where it is, know the potential for a new infection, and contain the virus as much as possible. Once there's a confidence that there's a level of containment that is possible, that is accompanied by the availability of testing, so you can ramp up testing when required,
right.
then public health will look at the restrictions and start to create more space for people to move around. So it's a fine balance. And if you get the balance right, that's why I think, PEI is going to be coming out of the restrictions in the next week or so, starting
right.
to ease the restrictions. And when you look at how they're doing it, what you don't want to happen is a double spike where it becomes prevalent again, then you got to shut things down. So we've talked to some of the manufacturing companies here in St. Catharines, and what their biggest concern is, GM is one of the largest. Their concern is, don't shut us down again. So we got one shot to open up, but once we open up again, you can't shut us down. So their message is, you got to be 100% sure that when you go to open things like manufacturing up, you can't shut it down again. So, these are the complexities are hard to understand for some people, but I'll talk about Market Square. So Market Square, we're looking to have open in the coming weeks. And we put that out there publicly because we want the public to understand what processes we have to go through. We've got to look at the size of Market Square. We've got to look at how many vendors we can put in Market Square. We got to look at how many people can walk through Market Square. And in doing all those things, we also got to make sure that people will be protected, both staff, vendors, and consumers. So it's not an easy thing like we can just walk in, flip the switch, and say, okay, the market's open. It's going to take us probably two or 3 weeks to work with public health to say, here's our roadmap to opening. What are there any blind spots? What's going to any causes? And so we wanted to share that with the public because it's the same process that the businesses are going to go through.
Why did you specifically choose Market Square to start off with?
It's a source of food. So food security is a very big issue that people are feeling anxious about. And so Market Square is a known place in which farmers bring their product to get to market. So it still will be a food source. And in doing so, we're supporting the farmers, but we're also taking some of the pressure off of the grocery stores. So if you can go to the market, and one of the restrictions is you're not going to bring your husband and your wife. You're not going to bring your kids. It's going to be one person, go to market, pick up your stuff, and leave. And so it's the same as going to a grocery store, but it just gives you another option to get food, and that's where we're starting. We want to relieve some of that pent up anxiety about food security.
Right. Okay. Well, I'll finish off with a question about finances and the economy. I heard you on TV talking about the results of the survey by the economic development team. And those were some pretty devastating figures in there. I think the one that caught my attention was the fact that close to half of the businesses that responded to your survey said that between 75 and 100% of their income had been lost. There's also a big uptick in employment or unemployment numbers. I'm just wondering if you look 6 months down the road and at the point at which mortgage deferrals and that type of thing come to a close, and now we're looking at what the city looks like from a financial standpoint and also specifically as it relates to real estate. I'm wondering how vulnerable is St. Catharines, Niagara to a type of post-COVID downturn, would you say?
So if I were to, in sort of visual terms, the recovery, they position recovery like a V, an L, which is non-recovering, a W, which you have some peaks of recovery, then valleys again,
Yeah.
and then a U. I'm more conditioned to think that it's going to be a bit of a U recovery, and we've gone down quite dramatically in St. Catharines alone. The projected 3-month loss of business revenue from those who fill out the survey was in the range of $80 million of revenue just disappeared. Not coming back, it's disappeared, it's gone. And so when we look at that U, we think there will be a sustained bottoming where that anxiety and uncertainty of will this happen again quickly, say in the next 2 or 3 months, will hold people back from, even as they return to work, it'll hold people back from having that confidence. And I think the economy is driven by confidence and trust. If you're confident in your economy, you'll go out. If you're confident in your job, if you're confident in your business, if you're confident in your community, you go out and spend additional dollars. If you're nervous or if you lack trust in the information that you're getting, you tend to hold back and so I think the U will also be about building confidence and trust back up. And then I think there will be a quick recovery on the other side of the U, because there is a pent up amount of consumerism that's going to occur. So I was talking to a banker yesterday, a president of a credit union, and his comment was what they're seeing in the bank accounts is that the bank accounts for their members are growing quickly, which means people aren't spending money, but they're still getting checks in from whether they're old age security, whether they're from unemployment checks, or whether they got a job. And so they're seeing their balance sheets go up. And what he's indicating is that that's all liquidity that is going to be unlocked as soon as there's confidence back in the market. So if we release the restrictions in an appropriate way, and we push COVID very much into a almost minuscule position, then I think you'll see an upward tick quickly in the amount of consumer spending. And I think, the real estate value of Niagara is still an attractive market for a lot of people. And I think what you're going to see is that there's going to be, and this was, I was just talking with some of my friends on the economic development side, is that people spending so much time in their houses or condos or whatever are going to evaluate, is that the space that they want to continue to live in? And so I think as part of that U, on the upswing of the U is going to be people going, I want to live in a different place. Like this has shown me that either my family's too big, or my house is too small, or my apartment's not big enough, or my condo's too big. People are going to reevaluate their living spaces. And so I think you're going to see a upward tick in the amount of transactions that take place as we come out of this.
Are you happy with your living space? How's it feeling where you are?
Yeah, I'm blessed because I'm adjacent to the 12 Mile Creek. And so there's an abundance of green space to be able to just really clear your head. And, so I do feel for the people that are in townhouse complex or in apartment buildings or condos. Like it's challenging. It's challenging. So I'm fortunate, but a lot of people don't have that good fortune right now.
Right. Well, you also mentioned that the city's looking forward to an important anniversary soon. Yes,
May 1st, it's our 144th birthday, and it's the incorporation. So it's the official incorporation of the city of St. Catharines as a city. And that's a day in which we're going to be taking to social media and asking people to celebrate with us as we stay home and stay safe. but it's also an opportunity for, bake with your kids, make some cupcakes, make a cake, or do some kind of drawing or do a card, and then share it on social media. Marv, I can say that St. Catharines was founded 144 years ago. We've gone through 2 world wars, a Great Depression, a recession. We've gone through the Spanish flu epidemic. The city has gone through a lot. The resilience of the community is quite strong. And I think it's also an opportunity for us to reflect on our history as a community and say, we've gotten through a lot of stuff before. We're going to get through this as well. And we're going to come out of it stronger.
Well, I'm looking forward to it.
You and me both. Now you're on the real estate.
Yeah.
Are you seeing any transactions?
Yeah. There is still stuff going on. Transactions are happening, but at probably about, 1/4 of the pace that we were seeing a month ago. So it's for the people that have 1/2 of the deal done. So if you're buying, you need to sell, or if you've sold and you need to buy, that's who the people that we're trying to help right now. There is some of that going on.
Are you surprised by that, or did you expect that there'd still be sales?
To tell you the truth, like you said at the beginning, there was no roadmap at the beginning. Nobody expected that we would see something like a car crash or going over a cliff or something like that. And I'm newer in the business, so I had, no way of knowing what to expect. But, everybody that I've talked to, like you were talking about what type of curve we might be seeing. One of our managers yesterday at Royal LePage NRC put out, an article that talked about a checkmark recovery. So, you have that deep drop, but then you have some sort of a slow ramp up to recovery. And so, personally, and I think everybody in my business is looking forward to that.
Yeah, I think based on what we've come to understand, I think real estate will be the first signs of recovery. And that'll be because of the amount of liquidity that will come out of the dormancy. So I don't want to call it a downturn. I'll call it a dormant state. And so it's almost like the economy is in a coma. And then once it emerges from the coma, I think real estate will be the first sign that, okay, people are starting to move again.
Feeling good. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, we're looking forward to that. Thanks very much.
No problem. I appreciate this. And so this has all been recorded. And so I believe that my staff will be sending you the link, and then you can share it as well.
That's awesome. I'm certainly going to do that.